Do you know that 4 people once hijacked a Singapore Airlines plane in Singapore and it eventually ended like a Hollywood movie? Watch on as I summarize the 1991 SQ117 plane hijacking that you likely didn't know of. So, here's how it all started.
Bravo 6, going dark.
On 26 March 1991, Singapore Airlines flight SQ117 took off from Subang Airport in Kuala Lumpur at 9 plus at night. SQ117 was headed for Changi Airport in Singapore. And if you have ever taken a flight between KL and Singapore, you'll know that the flight is shorter than a journey from Jurong to Changi lah. So, if your plane departs at 9 plus, you should be able to get off the plane at 10 plus and go home to eat supper. But the 114 passengers on SQ117, which mostly consists of Malaysians and Singaporeans, were not able to do that. The reason, there were 4 men on their flight who were about to hijack the plane.
Bravo 6, going dark.
At about 9:50 PM, when the plane started cruising, 4 men suddenly stood up and walked to the toilet. And strangely, they seem to have entered the toilet cubicles in pairs. Now, that's a little weird because it's a primary school kids going to the toilet in pairs. As it turns out, these 4 men were about to hijack the plane. The 4 men claimed to be members of the Pakistan's People Party. For context, the Pakistan's People Party was a Pakistani political party founded in the late 1960s to oppose the presidency of the then president of Pakistan. The leader of the 4 men shouted that they were hijacking the plane and instructed passengers to remain in their seats. And unlike those action movies where plane hijackers always don all sorts of crazy costumes, the hijackers on SQ117 were unmasked and looked just like anyone. But of course, they still had some weapons like knives, alcohol, and sparklers. The leaders then communicated with the pilot, Captain Stanley Lim, and threatened to blow up the plane if it landed in Singapore. Why? Because the hijackers want the plane to go to Sydney instead. Yet, at 10:24 PM, SQ117 did land in Singapore without being blown up. And no, it's not because the hijackers were convinced that the HDBs in Singapore were a lovelier sight than the Sydney Opera House. It's for a much simpler reason. The plane just did not have enough fuel to fly to Sydney. So, the leader of the hijackers permitted Captain Lim to land the plane in Singapore to refuel before heading to Sydney. But why did the hijackers want to go to Sydney so badly? And what exactly did the hijackers even want from hijacking the plane?
Bravo 6, going dark.
If you are looking to advertise your business in this channel, we can help you. There are guaranteed views and many big brands have trusted us. Just click on the link in the description. When the plane landed at Changi Airport, the leader of the hijackers ordered Captain Lim to stop the plane on the runway. At this time, he also communicated his demands to Captain Lim, who relayed them to the authorities. He demanded to speak to 2 people, the Pakistani ambassador to Singapore and the former Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, who was part of the Pakistan's People Party, which, if you have forgotten, is the party that the hijackers were from. The leader of the hijackers also demanded the release of some people jailed in Pakistan, including Bhutto's husband. For context, Bhutto's husband was arrested back in 1990 in relation to an extortion scheme that involved tying a supposed bomb to a British businessman's leg. And of course, the hijackers also demanded that the plane to be refueled and flown to Sydney. Well, things didn't go well initially.
Bravo 6, going dark.
Negotiations between police negotiators and the plane hijackers then began. Captain Lim facilitated the negotiation by relating messages between them because remember, it was in 1991. They could not just do TikTok videos to communicate with each other. But the negotiations were not 100% peaceful. At around 11:20 PM, one of the flight stewards, Bernard Tang, was beaten up by the hijackers. Then, he was thrown out of the plane and fell 4.5 meters down the tarmac. The good news was that he survived the fall and was later sent to the hospital. He even provided the police with information about the hijackers and their weapons. This is important back in 1991 because if this happened in 2025, the negotiators just need to go to TikTok and search for any TikTok live to know the situation inside lah. Because there will be at least 5 people live streaming what was happening lah. Then, at around midnight, shit hits the fan. The plane was almost set on fire. The hijackers sprayed the cockpit and control panel of the plane with alcohol seized from the first class cabin and threatened to set the plane on fire. At around 2:30 AM, the hijackers lit up some newspaper on the cockpit floor and threatened to set the plane on fire again. The fire was only put out after hostage negotiators agreed to refuel the plane. Later, at around 3:30 AM, while the first load of fuel was being delivered, yet another flight steward was pushed out of the plane. This time, it was Chief Steward Philip Chong. He was beaten up and pushed out of the plane onto the tarmac as well. Fortunately, he survived the fall and provided the police with even more information about the hijackers. Fast forward a few hours later to about 6:45 AM when the hijackers suddenly said they no longer want to negotiate. They issued a 5-minute deadline and threatened to kill one hostage every 10 minutes if their demands were not met. Yeah, that's almost like they have learned their negotiation tactics from watching Bruce Willis movies. So, guess what Singapore decided to do in response?
Bravo 6, going dark.
5 minutes later, at about 6:50 AM, members of the Singapore Special Operations Force stormed SQ117, and it really happened like in the movies. The plane doors were forced open with detonating charges. Stun grenades were tossed into the plane. passengers were asked to get down. Then, the 4 hijackers were shot dead. In fact, it was so dramatic that the hijack leader was shot 5 times and was still alive and tried to ignite his explosive, but the SOF leader shot him dead before he could do so, and all of that happened in just 30 seconds. You see, that was because when negotiations were ongoing, the SOF commandos were rehearsing the storming operation in a similar plane, which is why they can execute such a perfect operation. Also, it was such an amazing operation. Singapore received praise from media outlets all over the world on how we handled the hijacking. Anyways, if you think that former President S.R. Nathan was one of the negotiators, no lah, he was actually involved in another hijack incident of a ferry back in 1974. If you want me to do a video about that, just comment "blue cats are cute," and I'll just thank you for saying that I'm cute. Anyways, this also shows why NS is very important cause we should not take security for granted. Watch this video to know why NS men are always ready to defend Singapore. Also, please follow me on Instagram. I'm very poor thing and no followers, and I'll be posting short videos there. Link in description. And thank you for spending almost 6 minutes with me. I really appreciate it and hope that you learned something.